a lot's happened this week. And I told myself that since all videos starting today, the day of release, which is January 1st, 2025, I am going to make some changes to this channel because in the past, for the past few months since I've basically been working at Martin, I've been going through like a daily vlog of what I've been up to. And usually it consists of me stopping at Walmart's, frustrations there, praising the good stores, that kind of thing. But I don't really see a reason to do that going forward. So I think I'm just going to cover the major revelations that I had for the week, policy changes, neat things that happen, odd things that happen, good things, bad things, whatever. Trends I'm seeing, that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and do that as opposed to me talking about the work. I'm part of some Martin forums online, and one of the things that I came to realize is that going into the winter months, places like I-90 west of Denver basically is closed to like the Vail Pass and stuff like that over to Salt Lake City, and you're not allowed to take certain routes. That the Martin wants you to take southern routes to avoid bad conditions, and I like that idea for the most part. There's a couple of times I disagree with it, but not that I have any authority to actually do anything about it. Like, for example, last year when I was working for Schneider, the Vail Pass was bad, very bad, and it was all chain law and looking at the traffic cameras and stuff, it was extremely bad, like a blizzard. And so I went north, and then I cut over. I basically went north on, I think it's 25 at that point, and then cut across west on in Wyoming. But I only had one pod on the back of the flatbed, and so even though I didn't weigh at least 50,000 pounds, I was able to drive in that windy place because it was a flatbed. It was just one container, so I was able to just go straight across, and it was still safe, no problem. But coming back over that direction, going back to Colorado, it ended up being the exact opposite. Conditions in Wyoming were horrible, but it was completely clear going across I-70. It was a very beautiful drive. And so I almost think that it should be one of those things where if the road conditions are fine and clear, you can request an override or some sort of approval, like maybe the day of or the day before or something like that, as you're doing your trip planning, to make sure that you're approved for it. But it's a policy, and Martin has different policies that are just non-negotiable. One of them is also the U-turn policy, which I personally find to be extremely ridiculous. Again, I'm powerless to stop it. But I do know for a fact that by the time this video airs, I will no longer be working at Martin. I'll tell you why later in this episode. But anyway, the U-turn policy. You're not allowed to make a U-turn on the road at all, even in a designated legal U-turn place. And there are some roads, like if you go from like Dalton and you go to Tryon, there's no, the GPS takes you this way and then wants you to make a left turn. The problem is you can't make a left turn at this one exit, this one turn going on to Seneca. They've changed that intersection. So now it takes you instantly to the right. And if you look for the first legal place to make a U-turn, it's 15 miles down the road. I'm sorry. The first place you can make a left turn on in order to go back south is like almost 15 miles an hour, 15 miles down the road. And at speed limit 45, you're going about 40 minutes out of your way when all you have to do is go up about 1/10 of a mile and then make a legal U-turn, which is completely legal. And the road literally goes out extra wide with extra space for you to loop. And then on the side, it has an extra wide bit so that you could pull over. And then it's like a lump that loops back in. So you can, even in a CMV, cut way out, go a very wide, don't even have to go tight in a jackknife, big wide turn all the way around and go back down south. How do I know? Because before I knew about the U-turn policy or the nature of the U-turn policy, I did that twice. I have done it. Now I'm aware that basically in Naomi, The GPS is going to route you that way. But what you have to do is when you get to Naomi, you have to turn right on this one highway there and take it down like two or 3 miles, then make the left turn. And so that way you just go south on that road and you turn left onto it at a traffic light. So that way you don't have to make the U-turn. But there was somebody who posted in one of the forums today that said that he made a U-turn, even though it was a legal U-turn, in a very wide U-turn at that, but the company fired him. So you're not allowed to make a U-turn, but the company thinks that if you're, for example, going up and down the hills and you go over a hill and you come to, let's say, a road closure because police are investigating, but there is a place to do a legal U-turn before that. You are not allowed to legally do that. What they want you to do is call the police and have them help you legally back up. If they're in the middle of investigating or handling some sort of a collision or something like that, and you're in a CMV and you say, I need you to help me back up, they're going to say, we have other things we need to do. And so you're going to be sitting there waiting. And the company doesn't want to pay you for waiting. So again, it's a stupid policy. I don't know what the purpose of it is. I would like to think that you could have reasonable ability to make a U-turn, like perhaps maybe you call dispatch and explain it and then you're approved to do it, as long as it's something that you explain and it's approved. I mean, but they don't even allow that. So whatever. Again, nothing I need to really be concerned with. Another revelation I had this week is I was driving and the GPS mode is normally in the mode that where up is always facing straight down the road. There's also another mode that if you press the compass on it, it will orient north as upwards and you see the arrow pointing at whichever direction you're going. And then as opposed to the screen looking like this and your arrow, you're at the very bottom and your arrow is pointing up. So you see a big wide area in front. Instead, if you put it in the north as up mode, you show up in the center. And it has an arrow pointing whichever direction you're going. Well, when you are on the OmniTracks, it is extremely slow. If you engage the GPS and you start to drive out of the back of a Walmart towards the main road, I've talked about in the past, you have to kind of look when you enter as to which way you need to be facing, and you need to know kind of which way you're going to be heading out of it. But if you are starting to leave the parking lot, it will sometimes get confused because it doesn't realize what you're doing or how you're doing it. And it takes like a quarter of a mile of being on the road for it to orient as to where you are, unless you press that up equals north button and that little compass button. When you press it, it changes and it puts you in the screen and it actually shows you in the direction you're driving towards whichever direction you're driving. So if you're driving northwest, it will show you driving northwest on the thing and suddenly orient the roads around you so that way you know you're facing towards the road or you're facing away from the road. So you can see that even if your positioning is a little bit off. So that's something to keep in mind, is that if you're using an OmniTracks, you can press the compass button on the main navigation screen and it will orient north or whatever. So that's kind of a cool thing. One of the big things I'm having issues with, and I'm seeing more and more as I'm driving around my personal vehicle, is as you go over a county line, different counties are allowed to take roads and turn them into non-truck roads. And I think it's cheating when you're driving down the road, because I had time. So I came across an intersection and I saw that I went through the light. And then I went around and to the left. And as I started to make the left turn, I noticed that there was a no truck sign up there that only showed up after I made the turn onto that road. Which was straight in my case. But as soon as I went straight through the intersection and got onto the road and went like another 100 feet, I look at the no CMV sign. So I pulled into a gas station, which would be too tight to pull into in a semi. And then I looped straight through the other parking lot and went back across the opposite direction. So like I was going this direction, I went around and came in this direction. And I looked for any signs that said no trucks. There weren't any. And then I drove through, and then I went down there and turned around in another parking lot and came back. No truck signs either. So it is completely fine for you to go this way on the road. There were no signs telling you not to turn that way onto the road. So when you turn on it, you can't see the sign from that turn until you pull onto the road and drive down 100 feet. And then you see the no semi sign. And I'll tell you this, it says no gross vehicle weight rating over 36,000 pounds. So it's cheating if you're driving a semi because there is no place to legally turn around before that. So if I were ever driving down a road like that and there was no place to legally stop or turn around or whatever, I would be so mad if, and I've seen this happen, police officers sit on the other side of that hill and just sit there and wait for you. As soon as you drive over that hill, they'll pull you over and ticket you because you're in a semi and you're driving in a no truck road, because they happen to change the county line. And I have seen many police officers on that road because it's the road that goes between my family's, where my family lives and where I live. And I've driven this route for many years because I've known people on both sides and have driven it back and forth. And it never really occurred to me until I realized why when I was a driver. But I tell you, that's cheating. It's cheating when they do that on the road. Another thing that somebody posted about in the forums this last week is California Highway Patrol posted this article about how they pulled over a driver going the unsafe speed of 74 miles an hour. Well, California, if you've been watching this channel, you know that I hate driving in California, and the big reason is because of the speed limit is 55. It's the only state where the speed limit is 55 through the entire state. You're not allowed to go faster. Why is this an issue? Because all cars on the road are able to go 70. So you may say, well, you're driving a big semi, you should go slower. That's all well and good. Until you're a big box and you're a big box and there are big boxes all over the place and cars can go 15 miles an hour over and they're just zipping through and slaloming in and out of the semis. And they'll go like from here in front of a semi over to this side, and that's unsafe because they don't know what's on the other side of the semi. If we were able to, in a semi, maintain the same speed as everyone else, it would be far more safe on the road. But the CHP posted this thing that said, we pulled over a driver going the unsafe speed of 74 miles an hour when the statewide speed limit is 55. 19 over the speed limit. They were like saying it is unsafe to do so. Only in your state. Your screwed up, stupid state. Every other state will allow semis to go up to 80. No other state is 55. Many states are 65, which is where the governor cutoff is on most semis. So when you limit CMVs, you are making them a problem for cars, and cars zip in and out. That makes it unsafe. Allow us to all drive the same speed. Then if someone speeds, they're going to zip in and out, but they'll get pulled over and be fined, as opposed to cars that try to slalom around us and try to, zip in and out all over the place. They're the ones that are going to get into a crash. They're the ones that are going to make things unsafe on the road because the semis are going an unsafe slow speed. So California Highway Patrol really needs to get with it, and they need to change the speed limit from minimum of 55 to a minimum of 65. That way, we're at least not as dangerous as we are currently. Anyway, another interesting thing that happened this week was I picked up a load. I think it was on my Thursday actually, where there was it was a frozen dairy. It was zone 1 and zone 3 were at 32 degrees. The zone in the middle was negative 20 degrees. It was a frozen. The other two were dairy. Now, I'm mentioning this because the temperature on the center has to be at 10 degrees or below for them to let you out of the yard. If the temperature is above that, they say wait until the temperature drops into that realm. And when I picked up the trailer, it was not able to get below about 15. Then it would go up to about, it would not go below about 14. Then it would go up to about 15. Then it would go back down to 14. It would go back and forth, back and forth. So I stopped and had a tech look at it. And he looked at it and said, look at this next compartment over. and he had actually turned off in zone 1 the refrigeration unit, and the temperature was still falling. It was going from 32 to 31 to 30 after he ran a defrost on the trailer, which raised the temperature up to like 50 some odd degrees, and then it dropped again. But he said, what does it tell you? That the center section is having a hard time achieving something, but the next zone over is able to drop down despite being off, it's dropping in temperature. I said, a leak? He said, exactly, it's a leak. He said sometimes what will happen is they'll stack up the load so high the thermostat is kicking off because it's so high the air isn't blowing out and going all across the entire thing and trailer, so the temperature isn't dropping as low before the temperature cuts off. So he said, but in this case, he just did everything he could and he got the temperature to drop. He killed the next unit over, so that way, because it was a leak and without them having to transload the entire thing, he said, okay, I'm going to kill that unit. Let's see if we can drop the temperature down get it down to 10. As soon as you get out of the gates, turn the temperature on the zone 1 back on. And that way you could raise the temperature back up to 32. But when we did that and I got to my first stop, which was only like 45 minutes or 50 minutes away, it was not a big deal because because the temperature was hovering around 32 in both zone 1 and 3, and the temperature was holding about 10 degrees in the middle. So it allowed us to get off the road. It allowed us to get off of the yard, and it ended up being fine for the temperatures as well. It wasn't gonna contaminate anything by being above the proper temperature. So it wasn't going to be a violation or anything like that. Something that was interesting is on the same day, my Thursday, in Gainesville, we had a heavily leaning pallet. It was also a very well-wrapped pallet. And this is where, we're supposed to technically drive and not touch freight. But there was the guy with the pallet jack that was trying to pull it out. And the entire pallet was leaning, not just to the side this way or this way, but leaning on a diagonal. And I looked at it and I pushed up on it because it had the stretch wrap on it. Stretch wrap is not really for securement. It's for just keeping a pallet kind of organized. So it's not really for securement. So, but it was leaning on the pallet next to it. And so I was like, what are we going to do? He says, well, we can try to downstack it, or let me see what happens if I move the pallet. And so he tried pulling it back a little bit, and it was being held on just by the plastic. So I said, it's your choice, of course, but if you have a desire to try pulling out the pallet next to it, that it looks like it's barely touching, I can go in there and see if I can brace it and push it up, or if it's even safe enough. But if it starts to fall or whatever, obviously stop. It'll have to be downstacked. But he looked at it and said, you know what, let's try it. I think I could pull it off. And so as opposed to the holes over here and aligning it with the forks, instead of doing that, he went out of alignment like this in order to scoop up the pallet and have it lean as it lifts up. So instead of going square with it like this, where it's more like this, he went in line with it this way, which allowed him to go in and pick it up so it leans like this, which righted the pallet enough for me to just put hands on it to stabilize it and then pull it off. So to me, as soon as he pulled it off, he leaned it up against something, metal frame on the inside. They were able to downstack it. So it saved time. It also potentially saved the load, because it wasn't going to fall or whatever else, and it didn't have to be downstacked on the trailer. So it seemed to me to be a win all the way around, even though we're technically not supposed to touch freight. But anyway, that was interesting. On my Friday, 2 funny things happened. One was when I went to pick up my second trailer, I was trying to figure out why the trailer brakes were not releasing. I went back and looked underneath, and they were locked at a 90-degree angle on all of the the drum brakes. So I was like, what's going on? Why is it doing this? And I checked over the air and stuff like that. Everything looked right until I looked closer. And what happens is normally the two lines come out for the air tanks, and one side goes to the service brakes, one side goes to the emergency brakes. This time, and they're color coordinated, but they're wrapped in like almost like a conduit type plastic type thing. So it's kind of hard to see the colors, especially when it's gunked over. But instead of going like this, it went like this. So unbeknownst to me, I reversed the two colors. So I went always with the service brakes to the one to the left, and then always with the emergency brake to the right. But this time they were reversed for some reason. So I then realized that with the glad hands, I reversed it, and suddenly it was working fine. So apparently, if you put the wrong glad hands on, it does matter. Imagine that. Another fun thing that happened was that there was an area where there was heavy construction going on. And they put cones out where the road was, there was two lanes, and then it merged in. And I'm driving down the road about 10 miles an hour under the speed limit because we're entering a construction zone. And I'm looking in my rearview mirror, West Coast mirrors, and I see a car flying up in the next lane over. He knows that it's merging in. It's purely visible. But he decides he's going to, for whatever reason, try hitting the gas and going past me and try to beat me to where it merges all the way in. I maintain my speed, and I'm keeping an eye on him. And I was about to the point where I realized he wasn't going to put on his brake, and he was just going to fly up beside me and whatever and pull up in front. But, and I was going to slow down and let him pass when all of a sudden he put on the brakes extremely aggressively. And then he realized that he was going right into the cones. So, he actually, as he put on the brakes, he hit one cone. Once he realized he hit that cone, he kind of cut in between that cone and the next cone, but they were repaving on this road. And in doing so, and pulling after he hit one cone and then pulled into the other side that was, closed off, it ends up being that he pulled in about 75 feet behind a police officer that was marking the beginning of that. So that was fun. Because I saw him come to a stop, and I saw the police officer looking at him and starting to walk that way as I was slowly going on down the hill. So he probably got himself in trouble. If nothing else, he got a stern talking to, and the police officer probably scared him. All I know is that I was amused by it because the guy was a jerk and just going to try. He was speeding to begin with, and he was just flying like crazy. And when he realized he was not going to be able to make the turn, he puts on his brakes, goes about even with the back of the trailer, even though I was going to let him in if he continued to maintain that speed. And it was going too fast and cut over and hit a cone. So that was fun. It wasn't a cone. It was like one of those barrel cones that looks like a cone, like an orange and white stripes, but it's a barrel, vertical barrel. Anyway, that was fun. Now, the reason I say I'm not going to be working for Martin by the time you get this video, by the time you watch this, is because I have been contacted by multiple different companies emailing me or texting me saying, are you still looking for work? But the other day I happened to actually answer my phone. It was on my Friday. I was looking at my phone, and I just so happened to at that moment see it light up with a phone number I didn't recognize. I answered. It ended up being JB Hunt Recruiting. And the guy made a pitch to me. He was basically claiming that it was going to be less per week than I'm currently making. But it was Southeast Regional, so it's not, home daily. It would be home weekly. But there's a potential for more miles, and it's only a slightly lower rate without a weekend premium. But they end up paying more for stops when you stop. And most of the time they would try to keep you moving. But they said, yeah, our average driver gets, and then he named the amount. I said, let me think about it. that night, I ran my 2 loads and I was coming back to the DC and I stopped for fuel at a Pilot. And when I had started at the pump, next to me comes a JB Hunt intermodal trailer, which happens to be the division that called me and I was thinking about. So I asked the driver some questions. I said, is it true that, can you verify some information? She said, sure. And she verified all the information with slight adjustments. Like, it's actually $2 more than that to do a live unload. And that's actually correct, except the number is this instead of this. And so she corrected a couple little minor things that were neat to know. And then when I got to money, and I said, yeah, and they said you average about $1,400 a paycheck, and she just kind of stopped to do this number. And I said, what did I say? What did I say? And she said, maybe some drivers, but if you aren't afraid to work hard and you don't mind putting some miles in during your 5 days, you'll make more than that. I said, how so? And she said, you want to see my paycheck? I said, sure. And she goes and grabs her paycheck. I mean, she was volunteering it. And then she showed me that the amount that she made for 5 days was like $8 shy of $2,000. And I looked at it, it was 2,600 miles. So at 60 cents per mile, that would only be what, like $800? Or no, it'd be more than that. $1,600? Between 15 and 16, something like that. But the rest of it, stop pay. And she said, you get stop pay. You know, anytime you drop and hook, you can be in and out of there in 20 minutes or whatever. And you get like almost $40 for that, like $37, $36, whatever it is. That seemed interesting to me. I was like, that's pretty cool. So after talking to her, she said that she actually used to work for Martin during COVID, like the shutdown of COVID. And I said, really? Were you on the Walmart account? She says, I was. And I said, how do you like the Walmart account compared to JB Hunt? She says, I love JB Hunt. And she said, they allow you to, to work pretty much whenever you want. And I told them I wanted to work overnights, but the recruiter told me they were only hiring for day. And she just kind of went, no, talk to a manager. He'll work you whatever hours you want to work. If you want to work at night, nobody ever wants to work night. So that's probably the reason why the recruiter says we're hiring for day and then he transitions people at night. I guess old bait and switch. I don't know. But what I do know is that she told me that she basically confirmed all the information. And she told me it's a great company to work for. So I called back the guy, my contact, the recruiter, and I told him that exact thing, that I told him about the exchange I had with the driver. And I said, you know what? I think I am interested in making a move. He said, let me transfer you over. So he transferred me over to someone who spent about an hour and 40 minutes on the phone with me, taking my job application, looking over my past history, talking to me about things, showing me how to log in order to get to the 5 hours of training and whatever, various different things. And when it was all said and done, they assigned me my first day would be, as of the day that I'm recording this, it happens to be a Thursday morning. I'm about to go to bed and then wake up and go to work. So this will be my Monday technically, but it's a Thursday. So I'll go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But when I hit the 6-month point with Martin, I started getting paid time off show up on my app. Because I have the paid time off, there's 3 days. It ends up being that there was a family thing that I've been asked to help with. So I said, you know what, this would be an opportunity for me to go ahead and take the paid time off. And at the same time, I can make sure that I get those days off and I get paid for them so I don't lose them when I leave, because I accepted the position with JB Hunt Intermodal and I start on October the 8th. So I'm going to work on Thursday. I'm going to be Friday and then working Saturday, Sunday, and finish on Monday. And then Monday, I'm going to have a PTO day, paid time off. Then I'm going to go back to work Friday, then Saturday, then Sunday. Then I have my other 2 paid time off days. So I have a total of 3 days. I'm going to take those 3 days off, and it's been approved. And then I will go back to work that Friday. I'll work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I'll be off and going to JB Hunt orientation. So, yeah, that's what's going on. I have been. They signed me up on one of the things in the hour and 40 minutes. I was talking to the lady recruiter person, the onboard person. She signed me up for 5 hours of training online. I just got through doing it. It is a lot of repetition of what I've learned from other things, but you know what? It wouldn't be necessarily new to everybody, so I don't mind doing it, even though it's a long and boring process. But it was still something I was able to do from home. I was still able to do it at my own pace. And I finished it same day, not even 24 hours after they sent it to me, even though I had 24 hours to do the first module. And then they said they want everything done within 72 hours, and it's 5 hours total. I finished it all within 24 hours. And so I emailed them and informed them that I'm done with it. Do I need to do anything more? I'll wait and see what they say. But yeah, so that's that. That's the latest. So next time you hear from me, I will be in my third to last week at Martin, and I'll give you updates on anything new. So thanks for watching.